Good morning, students. This is Harcharan Singh, and you all are welcome to the e-learning portal of Cambridge International School, Dasua. As you know, we are reading the first textbook, that is Hornbill. Students, yesterday we had started We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together. That is written by Gordon Cook and Ellen East. So I'm going to recap. This is about one person who goes on a voyage with his family. That is the narrator of this story. Narrator is a 37-year-old businessman along with his wife Mary and two children, son Jonathan and daughter Suzanne. They all went on a voyage on their ship in July 1976. They started from Plymouth, England. They wanted to complete the sea trip around the world just like the one that had been completed 200 years ago by famous Captain James Cook. The narrator and his wife spent 16 years improving their seafaring skills. They got a ship that was built professionally. It was a 23-meter long, 30-ton heavy wooden boat and they named it Wave Walker. They took several months to test it in the roughest weathers and waters of England. Now, when they started their journey, the first part of their journey, that was a 3-year-old 1,05,000 kilometer journey, the first part was very pleasant. There was no problem. They sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. The narrator hired two crewmen before heading towards the east to tackle the roughest sea, that is the southern Indian Ocean. His helpers are Larry Vigil, that is an American, and Hop Ziegler, that is a Swiss. Now, on the second day, when they were in Cape Town, they encountered a strong wind that continued for several weeks. A strong wind was not a problem, but the problem was 15 meters high waves, which were the height of the mast. That was a big worry for the narrator and his family. Now, the next, that was in the month of December. They have been traveling for many months. On December 25, they had traveled 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. They celebrated Christmas together. The weather was not good, but in spite of that, they were able to celebrate Christmas. The weather remained the same till New Year's Day, but they hoped for it to change soon. They wanted the weather should change. Yes, the weather changed, but it got worse. It did not improve. On the early morning of January 2, the waves were very huge. They were sailing with a small storm jib and their speed was 8 knots. When the ship was sailing with huge waves, they could see the huge sea in front of them. The noise of the waves and strong winds, that was very painful for the ears. They dropped the storm jib to slow down the ship and hit a heavy mooring rope across the back part of the ship in a loop. They were making preparations lest they should be caught in a storm, so they are making all arrangements. They lashed everything with double force. They put on their oilskins, life jackets, attached lifelines, and went through the life raft trails and waited. They are just waiting that it was about the storm going to start. Then what happened around 6 p.m.? An unpleasant silence rolled over. Everything became so silent. It was an indication of disaster, which was about to happen. The wind suddenly dropped and the sky was darker with heavy black clouds. A huge cloud was coming towards the stern of the ship. Stern means the backside of the ship, but later the narrator realized that it was not a cloud, but that was a very big wave that was going to destroy their ship. It was twice the height of the previous waves, and they saw with the top of the wave looking unpleasant due to its height. Now, suddenly the thunder increased and the wave moved the stern up. They thought that it would not do any damage, but there was a very big explosion that vibrated the whole ship. A strong moving stream of green and white water broke over the ship. The narrator's head smashed in the wheel of the ship. He flew overboard and sank below the waves. And the narrator thought he is going to die. This was what we read yesterday. Students, before we move ahead, I just want to tell you about the different parts of a ship. This is a kind of ship that is being taken by the narrator and his family on their round the world voyage. So you just look at that. This is the main mast that is standing vertical, and just beside that, that is the main sail. Sail is used to change the direction of the ship. Then we can come here to the front part of that is on the left side. It's bow and cabin. On the right side you can see boom, cockpit, stern and rudder. These are the main parts of the ship that you should keep in mind while reading the chapter. Okay, students, after the very big wave that shook the deck of the ship and there was water everywhere, and the narrator was thinking that he was going unconscious. After that, what happened? Suddenly, the narrator's head came out of the water and the ship was about to overturn. But a wave turned her upright. His lifeline jacket was stretched and he grabbed the guardrails and sailed to the ship's main pole. The waves tossed him around the deck. He was injured as his left ribs cracked, his mouth filled with blood, and he had a broken tooth. He found the wheel, lined the stern for the next wave, and waited. There was water everywhere. The narrator could feel water below the ship, but he did not leave the wheel alone. Suddenly, the front door opened and his wife, Mary, came screaming that they were sinking. She said to the narrator, "The decks are smashed. We are full of water." The narrator handed her the wheel and climbed towards the door. Both the helpers of the narrator, the crewmen Larry and Herb, they were pumping the water out very fast. The timbers of the ship, timbers means the wooden parts, the ship were broken and were hanging badly. The starboard of the ship had sunk. Clothes, crockery, charts, tins, toys, everything was floating on the water. The narrator swam and crawled to the children's cabin and asked the children whether they were all right. The children replied yes. Sue, his daughter, she complained about a big bump on her head. The narrator did not pay much attention to it as his major concern was to save them. The narrator found screws, hammers, and canvas. He went back to the deck. The broken starboard side was letting so much water in. If the narrator could not fix the problem, they would all sink in the sea. The narrator stretched the canvas cloth and secured the waterproof hatch, which covered the gaping holes. Some water streamed below and some was now deflected over the side. The hand pump was blocked as rubbish was floating around the cabins and entered it. The electric pump was short circuited. As the water level was rising, the narrator found two hand pumps had been removed along with a rope, jib, a small boat, and the main anchor. He found another electric pump under the chart room. He connected it to an out pipe and it started working. The whole night was about the endless routine of pumping out the water, steering the wheel, and working the radio. There were no replies to their signals sent over the radio, as they were in the remotest part of the world. Suzanne's head was now more swollen, and she had two back eyes with a deep cut in her arm. When, upon being asked why didn't she tell him about her injuries earlier, she said that she did not want to worry her father when he was trying to save all of them. The water level was under control by the morning of January 3, so all of them took 2 hours rest in rotation. But there still was a leak somewhere below the water line. Upon checking, the boat rib structure was badly broken down till the base of the ship. The whole section of starboard was held together with a few cupboard partitions. The ship's condition was so bad that it would not make it till Australia. I mean, the ship cannot go to Australia, that is not in good condition. The narrator checked the charts and calculated that there were two small islands a few kilometers to the east. One of them was Isle Amsterdam, that was a French scientific base, and it was their only hope. They had to search and reach that island, but only if the wind and the sea do not cause further damage, else their chances were slim. The wave had destroyed the ship's auxiliary engine. After 36 hours of continuous pumping on January 4, the water was only a few centimeters left to be pumped out. But they still had to pump out the water which was coming in. They could not set sail on the mainmast. They hoisted the storm jib and sailed towards the two small islands. They had their first meal in 2 days. They had some corned beef and cracker biscuits found by Mary. The rest period was short lived as black clouds built up around 4 p.m. The wind was now 40 knots and the sea was still getting higher. The weather got worse, and by the early morning of January 5, the situation was bad again. When the narrator went to comfort his children, his son Jonathan asked him whether they were going to die. He asked his father, "Dad, are we going to die?" The father wanted to assure his son that they would make it. But then his son replied, he said, "Dad, we are not afraid to die if we can all be together." When the narrator heard this from his son, he was filled with a determination to fight back. He made efforts to protest the weakened starboard side. He used an improvised sea anchor that was made of heavy nylon rope and two 22-liter plastic barrels of kerosene. He tried all what he could do to save his family. The same evening, the narrator and his wife, they both were sitting holding hands and they were thinking that their end was near. Okay, students, it should be very much clear to you what we read day before yesterday. That I recapped in the beginning how the narrator, along with his family and two helpers, Larry and Herb, they all started their journey from Plymouth, England in July 1976. And the first part of their journey that was very pleasant. They got problem in the second part when they started from Cape Town and how the big wave that shook the deck of the ship and there was water everywhere. After that, what we read today, that was when there was water everywhere on the ship, the narrators had came out of the water and the ship was about to overturn, but a wave turned her upright. His lifeline jacket was stretched. He grabbed the guardrails and sailed to the ship's main port. The waves tossed him like a doll. He was injured, his left rib was broken, and his mouth was filled with blood and broken teeth. He took the wheel and did not leave it. And the narrator could feel water below the ship, but he did not leave the wheel alone. Suddenly, the front door opened, and his wife Mary came out screaming that they were sinking. The narrator handed her the wheel and climbed towards the door. Then both the crewmen, Larry and Herb, they were pumping the water out like madmen. The timbers of the ship were broken and were hanging badly. The starboard of the ship was sunk. Clothes, crockery, charts, tin, toys, and everything was floating on the water. The narrator swam and crawled to the children's cabin and asked the children whether they were all right. His daughter Sue told him that she had got a bump over her head, but that was not the time to pay any attention to the bumped heads because his main concern was to save his family because they all were sinking and the narrator found screws, hammer, canvas, and he went back to the deck. The broken starboard side was letting so much water in. If the narrator could not fix the problem, they would definitely sink in the sea. The narrator stretched the canvas cloth and secured the waterproof hatch which covered the gaping holes. Some water streamed below and some was still deflected over the side. The hand pump was blocked with rubbish and it was not working and the electric pump also short circuited. As the water level rose, the narrator found two hand pumps and they had been removed along with a rope, jib, a small boat, and the main anchor. He found another electric pump under the chart room and fortunately it was working. That was a very bad night. The whole night they spent in the routine of pumping out the water, steering the wheel, and working the radio. But they did not get any replies on their radios because they were in the remotest part of the world. Sue's head that was badly swollen and her eyes were also swollen and she had got a deep cut in her arm. When the father asked why didn't she tell about all her injuries, and she replied that she did not want to disturb him when he was trying to save their lives. The next morning on January 2, the water was under control, so all of them took 2 hours rest in rotation, but there was still a leak somewhere below the water line. When it was checked, the boat rib structure was badly broken down till the base of the ship. The whole section of starboard was held together with a few cupboards partitions. The ship's condition was very bad that it cannot go to Australia. So the only hope is that nearby there are two small islands. One of them was Isle Amsterdam. That was the French scientific base. And if the ocean and the wind help them, they can reach there. Otherwise, their ship is not in condition to take them to any further. The wave had destroyed its auxiliary engine also. Now, after 36 hours of continuous pumping on January 4, the water was only a few centimeters left to be pumped out. but they still had to pump out the water which was coming in. They could not set sail on the main mast. They hoisted storm jib and sailed towards the two small islands. They had their first meal in 2 days, some corned beef, cracker biscuits found by Mary. The rest of the periods that was very short lived, and there were black clouds built up around 4 p.m. The wind was now 40 knots and the sea was getting higher. The weather got worse, and by the early morning of January 5, the situation was very bad. And when the narrator went to comfort his children, the son asked his father if they were going to die, but the narrator tried to assure him, but could not. And the son himself told his father that they were not afraid to die if they are all together. This gave a kind of motivation to the narrator, and he got ready to fight back and to do his best. He took one improvised sea anchor that was made of heavy nylon rope and two 22-liter plastic barrels of kerosene. And the same evening, the narrator and his wife, they both were sitting together holding each other's hand. They were thinking that they could die. Thank you very much.